Hi, everyone. This is Sarah with a couple of cruising updates for you. We're actually almost at the end of season 2. We have 2 episodes left, The Bush in Brooklyn and Reds, which is a historical bar in Los Angeles. And we're still putting the finishing touches on those for you. What we have today is a bonus interview from our trip to Portland, Oregon, with Summer Seeley, a security guard at Doc Marie's. If you remember the Doc Marie's episode, it kind of centered around this whole controversy when the bar first opened, and Summer's story was kind of like entirely unrelated to that, though extremely compelling. And like in a more standard episode of Cruising, we probably would have centered the episode around this story because she's just such an interesting person and a good storyteller. So we've kind of been sitting on this interview and I edited it down a bit, and that's what we're gonna gift to you today. And we'll be back soon with more regular episodes, and then we've got some stuff in the works for Pride Month that we'll probably announce in the near future. So please enjoy this interview, and we'll see you again next week. Thanks. Have you heard of Olivia, the travel company for lesbians and LGBTQ plus women? You know what they say. Life is better in flip-flops. And when you're a lesbian or LGBTQ plus woman, you want to be able to go on vacation, put your feet up, and be your unique self. Olivia Travel creates full takeovers of their cruise, resort, riverboat, and adventure vacations, so you can kiss who you want to kiss without a care in the world. You've never felt relaxation like this. Discover Olivia for yourself at olivia.com or through the link in our show notes and save $100 on your next Olivia booking when you use promo code CRUISING. Can you describe your aesthetic again?
I mean, I don't know. I obviously have a bunch of tattoos and piercings, and I have a split tongue also.
Can I see it? I've never seen that. I've never seen it.
It's fun. But I have a big mohawk. My mohawk's like at least a foot long, and I've had it since I was 16 when I cut all my hair, and then I started shaving the sides, and I have tattoos on the sides of my head. And my name is Summer Seeley, and I am the security guard on weekends at Doc Marie's.
And how did you start working here?
Well, I think that the word got around that I was a security guard because it just came up in casual conversation with some of the employees. And then I'm not sure who I talked to first. I think it was Jaron, the manager. And then he mentioned it to Olga. I think it just came up really casually in conversation with the manager downstairs when I was hanging out. And we'd talked about it. And then he had said that they might be looking for someone. And I was like, yes, that would be great. You know, because of course, working as a security guard at a lesbian bar would be great. I was super stoked about it. So I think I met her like a week later.
But it was sort of like you had started coming here a lot.
Yeah.
That's kind of how it happened.
Yeah, I was a regular. I started becoming a regular for it was only like a couple weeks in before I started working here. But yeah.
Yeah. What was so special about it that you wanted to come here? Why was it did it feel so exciting and important to have a lesbian bar?
Oh, just because, I mean, as we all know, there's like none anywhere. They tend to, and it's kind of a phenomenon almost about why they don't last very long, or they just don't seem to be a popular pop-up. Having lesbian specific spaces is just something that is so uncommon that usually we have like one party a month at some kind of random bar, you know. And I was just super excited to support a lesbian bar coming to Portland. And, you know, like, and when I came, it's just like seeing so many women in the same space. I was also surprised. Like, it's just not something I was used to. I don't know why in my head I didn't expect it, but yeah. And that's why I decided I wanted to keep supporting it. And it's definitely nice to have a regular place to sort of just lounge around. And there's different age groups of lesbians that come too. It's a pretty great mingling spot.
Have you lived in Portland for a long time? Or?
Yeah, I moved here in 2011, so it's been like 10, 11 years, something like that.
Why did you move here?
Originally I'm from Kansas, and my mom passed away when I was 12, and then so I moved in with my sister who was in the military, and we were in California for like a year, and then she got stationed in Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. And then when she got out of the military in 2011, we were like, well, where do we want to go? Because she's also a lesbian. And so we were like, well, let's go somewhere queer friendly and cold and not sunny and away from our family. And so that's why we ended up here. It was completely random. it's been somewhat interesting.
So you lived in Hawaii with her?
Yeah, for like 5 years while she was stationed there.
Wow. What is the queer community like there?
Um,
Were you old enough to
Okay, I was definitely a child. So but so it's not too bad. It's not like the most accepting, I guess, if you're but I was not. I think as an adult it's different because the community, if you go to like touristy areas like Waikiki and stuff like that, but it's pretty religious. A lot of like the local families are pretty religious. So you either have people who are really, really sweet, or you have people that are like conservative with their like views about it. But I mean, in middle school and high school, there was a couple gay people. I was definitely the one lesbian, and it was right when Twilight came out, and I'm pale with dark hair, and I already had tattoos, and so everybody thought I was like a vampire and made vampire jokes all the time.
But that has nothing to do with you being a lesbian.
Well, oh yeah,
Lesbians in Twilight?
I think maybe in my brain I just connected the two because like it just makes sense to me. Maybe it's just Kristen Stewart. That's probably just it's just Kristen Stewart.
But historically, there are a lot of lesbian vampires.
Vampire anything is always very homoerotic in every way.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I'm completely here for it though.
So you had tattoos in high school already?
Yeah, I started when I was like 13.
Because your sister was your guardian and she let you?
Yeah, she let me. I mean, I started, my father allowed me to get my first one when I was in Kansas when I was visiting him. And then I just like, but my parents and my family always knew that I was going to end up with a bunch of tattoos and piercings. I've kind of always been this way. And so it just kind of like a domino effect after I was 13.
They just didn't fight it. I mean, that's helpful.
Yeah, it was. And
Yeah.
That's just the type of person I am.
I mean, they're gorgeous.
Thank you.
Can you like talk about them a little bit?
I mean, yeah, I like just artwork for the most part. Some people ask me like what they mean, but they don't really have a lot of meaning, honestly. Like I love really big, like heavy black work, geometric shapes, symmetry. I like symmetrical piercings and symmetrical tattoos, flowers and animals and things like that. But most of it is the only one that has meaning is this one that I tattooed myself, and it's I stenciled the note that my mom had written me before she died, and I like tattooed it on myself.
Whoa, with a gun or?
Yeah, I'm a licensed tattoo artist in Oregon also.
That's really cool. Okay, yeah. Lots to ask you about your life. How did you get into, like, how did you start working security?
So I was like 16 when I first moved to Portland. I was like 15, and so then there was this underage kind of like inclusive gay nightclub called the Escape nightclub, and it was a pretty weird, crazy deal. There's a lot of things where maybe not. I don't know if I would say the word legal, but like regulatory. I don't know, but it was a fun place, like crazy looking everywhere. There was like all kinds of like cool punky people, and like it was a place for teens to go where they didn't sell alcohol, and because of that we could stay open until like 4 a.m. And so I started volunteering there. Like I became really like a regular there. Obviously it was like my awakening of who I was as a person was going to that club, and I met all of my friends there, and then I started volunteering there and helping them out and like working there. And you can't legally do security unless you're 18. So I was mostly just helping out. And then when I was 18, I got my security license. And then after the bar closed, I just continued doing it. And so I've been doing it for quite a while.
Wow. And so that's your primary income, like your
yeah, I do a lot of art, or I'll do tattoos and stuff every now and then. There's all kinds of different things, but security's always been a pretty like, especially some jobs are obviously a little bit more lucrative than others, but it's a fun job though. That's why I like it.
It seems very linked to like your love of or like your like appreciation of nightlife.
Yeah, like I'm kind of a wallflower. I'm one of those people where I really like to people watch, and so when you're a customer, it's a little bit more awkward, because if you're just just watching people at the bar, but when you're working somewhere, it's. You have an excuse to watch everybody, and then you can also dip if someone you don't want to talk to. You're just like, oh, I'm sorry, I gotta go clean something. I don't know.
So interesting.
Yeah, it's always been. I like going to bars and clubs and watching and like listening to music and seeing the vibe, but I don't necessarily always want to be a customer.
Yeah. So did that? I mean, it's like you have like a role there. So
yeah.
That makes so much sense.
It just fits my vibe. It's always been like my vibe is to work at bars and clubs rather than necessarily going.
And that obviously started with
the Escape. Yeah. Like, I mean, because it's one thing to be there as a customer, but honestly, there's just a whole different vibe when you have such a close relationship with all the employees, and then you have a different like position of how you interact with people when you're working there. And I just prefer that dynamic.
Do you remember how you discovered what is it?
The Escape nightclub. Yeah, I went to a gay youth summit when I was like, had first moved here in high school, which is like a once a year thing. And they had mentioned that I had heard through the grapevine through other youth there that there was like a gay nightclub for teenagers. I was like, what? And so I borrowed my sister's car and I went for the first time, and it was crazy. It's like any other nightclub, and it's super trippy, and there's lights and fog everywhere, and like the light up dance floor, and a bar that serves like Red Bulls or juice and soda and things like that, and like snacks. It was like just such a cool vibe. It was crazy, you know. It was a really nice place.
And what's part of that, like the appeal, is like finding queer.
Yeah, like I mean, because when you're not 21, like what do you do? You know, there's really not a lot of stuff to do that's not. Well, I guess where you're allowed to mingle with other teenagers outside of a school setting or outside of like a completely guided by your parents setting, you know, it's like you're allowed to sort of be yourself and like almost have a taste of what an adult life would be like without there being obviously that aspect of it. It was a very unique experience, though, of course, it got a lot of backlash and like there's a lot of public opinions about it but it still persisted for quite a while.
What was that specifically?
Oh, well, I mean, just because, like, having any kind of club that involves teenagers, there's always the concern of, like, oh, well, why would they do that? You know, and then what's the risk of, like, teenagers getting in trouble or people sneaking in drugs or, like, adults being allowed in? And, like, how do they keep them from interacting with another? Like, it just, there was all kinds of, but that's what every bar deals with, to be honest. Like, every bar deals with that kind of backlash in one way or another.
So how did you, like, was it from a really young age that you started feeling like you were queer? Was that world sort of opened up to you by your sister? Like, how did that happen?
It's like the minute I watched Mulan for the first time, you know? It's like, oh, Hunchback of Notre Dame, you know? Demi Moore's voice just really got me. But, like, I think when I was younger, I didn't really associate it with anything, like, sexual. I didn't really know what it was, you know? I also wasn't taught about gay stuff, right? I was raised in a relatively religious family. And my sister didn't come out as gay until she was 17, the day before she ran off to the Navy. She didn't even tell anyone. She was afraid of the reaction. So she's like, I'm gay and 17, but also I'm leaving tomorrow. So just in case something went wrong. And then I was like shocked and I was kind of like disgusted because I was like vaguely taught that was bad. But then I immediately clicked things. I was like, oh man, I'm in love with my 4th grade teacher. Like it was perfectly innocent, but that was when I think I realized that my like slight cute infatuation with women, babysitters, teachers, characters on TV, like then I kind of clicked that was what that was. And I was a little upset about it for a while, you know, did that typical like praying to God to be normal kind of thing, not in a really bad way, but I was like, wow, this sucks. And then once I moved in with my sister, it took me like 2 years to even admit to her that I was gay. She knew. It was so obvious to everyone.
You already had tattoos? Like...
I know. Well, I mean, I was like 12 when I came out, so I didn't have any then. Right, it was like a year or so after that I started doing that.
Okay, wait. So how old were you when she went to the Navy?
Oh man, she was 10 years older than me, so I was 7.
Like
7 or 8, yeah.
And then you would say that like pretty shortly after that, like after that happened, you were realizing.
It was like 9 or 10, like halfway through 4th grade, when I was like, okay, yeah.
Because of your teacher.
Okay, I hope that you never ever listen to this. But so yeah, it was she was just a young, beautiful woman who was really sweet to me, and like so when you're surrounded by somebody that's a young, pretty woman that's not related to you, right, every day, and I was just like, I always want to like do really good on my test, or I never wanted to upset her, or I always was like trying to help her out on recess. I'm like, who cares about recess? I'll help you, you know, that kind of stuff, like cutesy little stuff like that. It was perfectly innocent. But I think it was my sister halfway through the year telling me that and then me coming to that realization that was a thing. And I was like, oh my gosh, what if this is, you know, what that is? So yeah, I was like 10 when that happened.
That is so insanely relatable to me.
Yeah.
Teachers are like the ultimate, but it's like exactly what you're saying. It's like someone you're not related to.
Yeah, and most teachers are not like, you know, they're older. It's not really at all the kind of dynamic like where those feelings would arise. But it's like if they're really, she was like 23. Yeah. And if they're really young and they're really beautiful, they're not related to you and they're super sweet to you and you see them every single day. It's like, right. Of course.
Of course. Señora Matthews, I had no choice. Yeah, that's really cute. Okay, so but you're living in Kansas then.
Yeah, I was in Kansas then.
Can you talk a little bit more about like your religious upbringing?
I mean, it was luckily like my mother was not crazy religious. She was like mildly religious. The rest of the family, like my father was not, like he was pretty, and they got divorced and they lived separately for a while. So like it was my other family, like my uncle, my grandparents, my aunt, and then of course just the community in general was very, very religious. And I think I was super tomboyish and weird. Like there was a point where I think after like second grade or third grade, they couldn't keep me from wearing like boy clothes. You know, I was like, no, this is not my vibe. And I had long hair like down to my ass. And I was like the only way that you could tell that I was a girl at that point, honestly. And sometimes I think that my family, like my grandparents, like really tried to discourage me from shopping for clothes that way. Like they didn't want my mom to like necessarily let me wear clothes like that. I think I could, if I remember, I can remember moments where that happened. But it wasn't too bad comparatively to other people. It wasn't like, it was, they ended up letting me be myself. They just didn't feel comfortable with it. My mom was always chill though.
Yeah. What was your mom like?
She's like if Robin Williams was a woman. Like honestly, she was like very like eccentric artist, very happy and like always did things for people, like very spontaneous and random. But also like, you know, she was bipolar and she struggled with manic depression quite a lot. And so she would like, you know, it was a struggle. But she was overall a very good parent, and she was very loving and weird, and I liked that.
Yeah, she obviously had like a huge influence.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, she was a crazy lady.
So then how was the decision made that you would go and live with your sister?
So I think, when my mom passed away due to suicide, and I think that she kind of knew, her will was changed, like, if I remember correctly, like shortly beforehand. And she also wrote the letters like the day before and stuff like that. My parents had been divorced since I had been 7, and he was very like independent, and it just wasn't really ideal for me to stay in Kansas and to be alone with him. You know, he was a perfectly fine dad. Like I love my father. It's just not what I think I would have needed, and he probably wouldn't have needed that either. And so I think she changed the will so that I wouldn't be left to my grandparents or anybody else in Kansas. I think she knew that would be the best option for me to get away from Kansas. And so that's why she made that decision. And my sister and my father also accepted that decision, and he signed away his parental rights to her. And that was like the agreement that everybody made.
Your sister must be like amazing.
Oh yeah.
At 22 to...
She was like 20. She was like 21 maybe, or not even when she took me in. Yeah.
Do you know anything about like what that decision was like for her?
I honestly, I haven't talked to her too much about it, but like, you know, it's crazy now because I'm like 27, and so I can't even imagine myself at 20 taking a 12-year-old in or a 10-year-old in, you know. And so when I think about it, she was always super smart. She knows like fluent Mandarin Chinese, and she knows how to build computers and all this crazy stuff. And you know, she's always been a great parental figure. It never seemed hard from my perspective, but I think she probably also just made it so that I didn't ever see any kind of struggle, you know. But I can't imagine it was super easy for her to deal with like the death of our mother, and then taking on me and raising me, and then also being in charge of like a lot of family settlement type issues, you know.
Were you really scared at the time? Like stressed out about like the changes?
No, honestly, I mean, it was, I can't even remember. I feel like a lot of me just sort of blocked it out, but like I was happy to get away from Kansas. I think when my mom died, I realized a lot of the dysfunction that was actually happening. Like it all just clicked in my brain really suddenly. And I just really had like a big bad taste in my mouth for my family. I was like, I just didn't want to be around any of them. And I think it was a relief to be with my sister, and everything was pretty calm after that.
Yeah. What was your life like with your sister? So remind me where she was when you first moved with her.
She was in California. She had been there for a couple of years. So we finished out the 8 months that roughly that she had left there in Monterey, California. And it was nice. Like, I mean, she like, I had my own room, and she let me cut my hair and express myself the way that I wanted to. And she, you know, we got along. We both played video games, and she was always really encouraging of me to just be myself. And she was always a really great parental figure. There was a very low stress environment for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What was it like coming out to her? How did that conversation go?
Well, she would ask me periodically, like, are you gay? I'd be like, no. definitely not. But and meanwhile, I'm dressed like the biggest tomboy ever. Like seriously, like unquestionable. But I think it was like elementary school in like 6th grade. I kissed this girl at school, and I finally told her casually over dinner. I was like, I kissed a girl today. And she was like, yeah. So it wasn't really a big deal because I knew she was gay, so I knew it wouldn't be a big deal. But I guess I was like in denial about it. I was like, no, I'm not gay. You're gay. I'm not gay. But it was super casual. And then from then on, it was just like, it was so obvious.
So how did you end up kissing a girl in 6th grade?
Well, I'm trying to even remember. I think I actually kissed a girl for the first time like in 4th grade, and it was like we stuck our feet up in the tube slide in the middle of the slide so that we could just like, stop moving. It's a very private place. And then she was like, I've never kissed a girl before. We should just do it. And I was like, okay. It was so cute and adorable, like, and innocent. That was my first experience. And then in 6th grade, I think I kissed like a couple girls in 6th grade. Probably, yeah. I was like 4 or 5 different girls, I think.
Whoa.
I know. And then in middle school, I was a bad boy.
What do you mean?
I had like 3 different girlfriends, I think. And, what's funny is like they were not at all gay until they decided to be with me. But of course, we're all like middle schoolers, but I was the only one that was like passionately a lesbian. I was like, yeah, I'm a lesbian. And everybody else is like confused about their sexuality and like doesn't know. And so it was more of a cute thing to do. And it was like a fun, quirky thing to do for them. But yeah.
Wow, I'm so jealous of that right now. Like, aren't you? I'm like, I want to be the cool, like, tatted lesbian in my middle.
Oh, man. It was a trip for sure.
And then from there, you go to Hawaii.
No, that was in Hawaii because I was only in school for like 8 months, and that was like the remainder of 4th grade.
Okay.
So then 5th grade on was in Hawaii.
Okay.
Until like the first year of high school, which was like I was only there for a couple months, then we moved to Portland.
So in Hawaii, you're like having girlfriends.
Yeah.
Fully out and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
definitely. Yeah.
How much of an influence did your sister have on you, like in general? Like, were you able to like be exposed to?
She had a pretty good influence on me. Like I remember, like I kind of dressed like her for like a good 2 or 3 years.
Fair.
Because we were somewhat similar. Like she's kind of tomboyish, and she I like the kinds of clothes that she would wear. We were somewhat similar, so she definitely was like my little gay idol when I was a child.
Totally. Wait, what's her name?
Her name is Shalina.
She's like an icon, I feel like.
Yeah.
Where were you living when you first moved? So in California, where was she living?
She originally, when you're, it's just you in the military, I think she was probably on barracks in some kind of way. But because she took me in as a dependent, and I'm a child, they gave us a house. So I never saw where she was living before. I don't particularly remember, but we lived in a house. They gave us a small little house, and it just was a normal house, a normal little neighborhood. I can't remember anything specific about it. There might have been other military families there, but they'd all seemed normal to me. I couldn't tell. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then can you describe what your living situation was in Hawaii?
Yeah, it was similar. They gave us a house in a nice little area that was close to a school. And they paid for that. They paid for my health insurance and things like that in the military, honestly. Like, if she had taken me in and wasn't in the military, it would have been a lot more difficult for her to support me. But, yeah, the military helped quite a lot with our ability to be comfortable.
Yeah, totally. It would have been, like, impossible for her to support you.
Yeah, I can't imagine, honestly.
Yeah.
It would be really, really difficult.
Yeah. So then can you talk a little more about the decision to move to Portland?
Yeah, I mean, I was probably 15, and we just, we were both, I'm very, we don't want to live in somewhere hot and humid anymore. We were both very, into the cold, dark weather, so living in Hawaii was kind of miserable for me, to be honest. And we didn't want to go to Kansas or anywhere close by, because the family at that time was still trying to maintain some sort of connection, which was just really not the vibe. And we decided that Portland was a good far enough away, and it was queer friendly, and it was the weather was more our style, and that's kind of why we made the decision. That was really all it was based off of, honestly.
How did you end up going to the youth camp?
Well, I just really liked being gay. And I just really wanted to Hawaii was so different because as much as we had kind of a social, we were also really isolated. there's not like a lot of togetherness. I felt a little socially distant, and so I was pretty longing for connection with other people my age, and like more socialization. And so as soon as I got into high school, it was such a queer friendly area that plenty of high schoolers students in the school were very open about being gay. There was a gay straight alliance, and this is something I had never even fathomed, really. The fact that I was the lesbian in school was always the big deal. So then coming to a school where there's like a lot of out gay kids and they're all talking. So then I went to the Gay Straight Alliance, and then they were talking about the Gay Youth Summit. And so I was like, okay. And then I went, and I was like, wow, this is great.
What was it like? Like, what did you guys do there?
It's like a conference building, and then they like decorate it all gay, and then all these little like youth support organizations. It's all just networking. It's just social networking all day for like 6 hours.
I mean, it like worked for you. Like
it did.
You got the hookup.
Yeah, I met my first girlfriend there immediately.
Did you really?
Yeah. And then also my second girlfriend. Oh man, see, this is gonna make me sound really mad. I promise I'm a good person. But it was just like, I just really liked having fun and like meeting people, and like, like I think I got with my first girlfriend there because you're allowed to go to them until you're like an adult, because it's a youth summit. So I was like, I would go like every year. And so I dated like 2 different girls from there. And then of course I found out about the nightclub thing, and then I introduced other people to the Escape also from that. The whole thing was just like so opening for like discovering who you are and like networking with other people, and it really drastically changed my life and my ability to sort of find who I was and like what I wanted to be and implement that in my life.
Have you heard of Olivia, the travel company for lesbians and LGBTQ plus women? You know what they say. Life is short and the world is wide. And when you're a lesbian or LGBTQ plus woman, you want to be able to go on an adventure, have some fun, and be your unique self. Olivia Travel creates full takeovers of their cruise, resort, riverboat, and adventure vacations so you can zipline or scuba dive knowing you're with your own community. Discover Olivia for yourself at olivia.com or through the link in our show notes. Save $100 on your next Olivia booking with promo code CRUISING.
After the club closed, and I was, doing security, but then I was a biohazard cleaner, and like I cleaned like hoarder houses and like death scenes and stuff like that.
How did you get into that?
Because I'm weird, I'm just because I'm super weird. And I was like, okay, so I was looking for jobs like when you're heavily tattooed, and like I didn't want a boring job. I wanted something exciting that wasn't going to care about what I look like and that I could only have a GED for. And also, people need to do that job. People who are like capable emotionally of handling it. And even despite what I've been through in my life, it's just I've always fit that vibe. Like that's just the type of person I am. And I called a guy who had a local little group that did that, and I came and did one hoarder house cleanup thing just to see if I could handle it, and then he just kept calling me back. And then we had our first death cleanup, which was pretty gnarly. It was pretty gnarly. It was like a woman that had committed suicide in her bedroom, and like we had to get this Tempur-Pedic mattress that was just like soaked with blood out of the house, and like I had to talk to the family, and I was actually it was good because I talked to the family. She had kids. She was about the same age as my mom. It was like all done in the same way, and so I was able to talk to the family in a way that was a little bit better than like my boss was able to. And like I actually sort of had like a mild therapy session with them in the house about how to deal with the kids and like what it was like for me. And so it was an interesting job, but there was like aspects that really fit well for me to do that kind of work.
That's incredible that you can like take that grief and like face it. Like
it was just interesting. I don't know. I think that like I was never super sensitive to stuff like that. Like I just really, I have a high tolerance for it and like dealing with it compared to some other people.
So when you were there, like your feeling on it was like that you could be really helpful.
Yeah.
It wasn't that you felt really
well, and that there has to be somebody that does it. And you never know until you actually do it. Like my boss was super concerned about like how I would react considering my history when I walked into the room, because we're in our suits, and he was like waiting. He was basically waiting for me to like completely tap out. And I go in there, and of course it's as bad as you can imagine. I'm sure we can all imagine how bad it could be, and it was pretty bad. And I was completely fine, like we just talked about casual stuff, like what were we going to do that day? And like, it took us like a couple hours to clean everything. And like, you know, and then he wanted to take me to dinner afterwards, and I think he was waiting to see it. Like, he was like checking, waiting to see if I was like okay. And I'm like, I'm fine. And so then from that time on, like, I just kept with the job, and I was like one of the, because he said people tap out, obviously, and it was just the type of job that I was, you know, fit for. But it also, you know, it was pretty dangerous, and I have a muscle disease that started to really become a problem with that type of work. It was too laborious, and it wasn't really paying me often enough. So I quit after about a year, but it was still an interesting job that I do not regret at all.
So getting making that call initially was just that you were thinking about like, oh, this kind of work would be
Yeah,
good for me.
I know. I told him, I was just like, I don't know if you need anybody. This is the kind of work that would be good for me. I have a lot of tattoos and piercings like this, you know, and I want something interesting to do with myself right now. And he's like, okay, I need the help. You know, if you can handle it, let's go. Let's try. And that was really all it was.
Do you remember what the advice was that you gave to that family?
Yeah, I mean, so like the kids were all different ages, and a couple of them were my age at that time, you know. And the brother was angry. You could tell. The father was real sad. And those were the two people that were there. And then he asked for advice about how to deal with the kids, and I said, don't treat them all the same. Because some of the kids might be sad, but some might be like me, where I was really angry and distant, and I wanted my routine to stay the same. I wanted to go to school the next day. I didn't like when people were patronizing towards me, or like they were weirded out that I wasn't crying, that I wasn't sad. And they were like trying to pull it out of me. Like they tried to force me to go to a therapist who was really like kind of demeaning and patronizing. And I was like, it made it worse for me for people to do that. And it made me more angry, and it made me more like I want to say like shut in about the whole situation. So I was like, just treat them differently. Like if they're quiet and reserved and upset, and like don't try to pull it out of them, and just kind of like keep the routine the same. Because that really was what made me feel better, was keeping my whole life exactly the same, going to school, going to bed in the same bed, and pretending like everything was the same, so that I could gradually like adjust to my situation on my own terms. The brother was like comforted with the fact that I was angry. Because he was clearly angry. Like, you could tell by his body language. He was angry. Like, you know, his sister did this to the kids, to the family. Like, of course, it's valid feelings. And the father was super, super sad. He was, like, crying. It was a totally different reactions to the same situation. And that was really all I was talking about with them. Sort of validating their feelings in a way. Hoping to mitigate some of the issues with the kids that they might come across. Or, like, you know, if they're going to be upset that one of the kids is not sad. That can be upsetting if you're, you know, expecting a certain reaction.
Did it feel like therapeutic to you at all? Like, did you feel good?
I felt good about like helping to mitigate some things that maybe I had gone through with a family. And it feels good to know that, like, because the brother was totally checked out. He didn't want to even talk to anybody. And it wasn't until I had talked about what happened and how I felt that he actually like started paying attention to me at all. So you could tell like it helped a little bit. And like it feels nice. I wouldn't say that it was like, I mean, I've already been all well through that, you know, so I'm pretty past all that. I don't really, again, like I've never been a person that needs too much like emotional support with stuff. I'm a very chill person. But it felt nice to help other people. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How old were you when you were working there?
I was probably 19 or 20, 21. Yeah.
Okay. What is the muscle condition that
it's Isaac's syndrome. It's a neuromyotonia. It's like this rare neuromuscular disease that causes like it's like a seizure disorder. It makes my muscles, especially in my legs, like constantly overact and like tense up. And so I like my feet will point forward and I like can't walk, and I'll have to go to like the ER sometimes to take like intravenous medications. It almost looks like tetanus, you know, like when people's muscles contract and like contort their body in a certain way. And so I had to take like seizure medication to keep it from happening. I remember I was like off work, and I texted Olga, and I was like, yeah, I'm in the ER. It was super annoying. Luckily it wasn't on a work day, but it's pretty annoying. I have handicap parking though.
Nice.
Yeah, it's great.
So it's just kind of part of your life is like sometimes you have to deal with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, the medication helps astronomically. So, I mean, it's usually not a big deal.
I mean, it must have been really scary when it first started.
It started when I was 15, and it was so mild that I just like ignored it. And people, like, I failed PE all the time, and everybody was like, you're lazy. Everybody feels the burn. I'm like, meanwhile, I'm like dealing with like a super rare disease. It wasn't until I was 19 and like went to the ER like multiple times for like, and they thought I had tetanus, and they were doing all this blood work, and they didn't know why. Like, my body was just like lockjawed, and they didn't know. But it's a really rare disease. It's like only like 500 people in like the world are diagnosed officially with it. It took a long time for them to figure it out. It was super lame.
Scary.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're like through that.
Oh yeah, no,
not knowing.
it's not as bad as like ALS or MS, which is what they thought I had at first, which I would have been way more upset about.
Yeah, that's really scary. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's like under control.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
What did you think as an outsider, everything that was going on here and on the internet, like about this place?
Well.
We're gonna be very like careful and intentional
Of
about
course.
what we actually put
Oh,
in.
of course. Yeah.
So if you want, I would love to know like what your experience was. With
So, I mean, I am obviously like I'm coming in like very outwardly supportive of a lesbian bar. I am not going to be easily swayed into judging them or trying to discredit them or trying to tear them down. That is not at all what my position would be. It would have to be something super serious and crazy for me to be like, ooh, I'll step back. So I immediately was a little like skeptical of things that people were saying. They were only open for one night and it's like a small bar. So you can imagine how many people are showing up. And I never was here on that first night, but I think a lot of stuff was just blown completely out of proportion. And then, I don't know, the queer community can be a little volatile sometimes within itself. And it's just easy for like rumors to spread and for people to really like want to pick sides. And I'm like, this is just really not the vibe. You didn't even give them any time to like settle themselves before this all got blown out of proportion. I never thought much of it, to be honest. I never thought anything of what people were saying. I just was excited to come.
Yeah.
So
that was always your sort of opinion on
Yeah.
it before you knew Olga. You were just like not going to take it seriously.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I didn't think even twice about it. And honestly, I would have been surprised if nothing like that happened at all. Being a lesbian bar, I immediately expected it. And it's interesting. I think it's because like I've tried to think about like why they deal with so much like issues where things are a little sensitive. It's like the word gay is kind of an all-encompassing word for like gay club, gay pride, the gay people. But lesbian is not an all-encompassing word. It is a very specific word. And I think the fact that the bar labels itself a lesbian bar makes people feel like it's exclusive. And, the queer community is very passionate about how everything needs to be politically correct from like every perspective. And nobody can be offended and everything has to be so inclusive of literally everyone. But it's like the bar is inclusive. And I think there's just a misinterpretation about the fact that we're using a specific word instead of a generalized word. I don't know. I think people just really need to give it a try and like let it settle itself and like prove itself before people make a lot of assumptions about that. And I think it will take some time, but that's kind of what my perspective is on the whole issue. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you never had any hesitations like hanging out here, getting a job here? Like,
Nope.
Because you came here and you...
Yeah, I came here and from what I saw, everybody was really nice. And there was like a lot of like the customer base was exactly what I was hoping it would be. And I saw absolutely no problems and I saw a lot of potential and I was immediately excited to keep coming. And then as soon as I got a potential offer to work here, I was like, yeah, of course I would work here. So that was kind of my perspective throughout the entire thing.
Mm-hmm. Do you get people asking you about it?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Can you like talk specifically about
Oh yeah. Like I mean, I've gone to CC's or like go out like where like I think I came back from here and they didn't know that I had worked here. And so somebody's like, oh, you shouldn't go there. And I was like, I work there. So
I'm gonna go there.
Yeah, so I'm like, and because I'm used to people talking about the bar at this point. Like, there's going to be the people who are disgruntled and who only pay attention to rumors, or who like, who knows, like they have their own biased opinions. So I just don't really try to talk about it. I'm like, I don't really like. I'm just trying to chill, And they were like, oh well, blah blah blah, this and this and that, and I'm like, do you even directly know for sure like what you're talking about, or are you just like parroting things that you've heard on the internet and so you just decide that you're gonna hate the bar? And but it's kind of that stuff. It's catty rumor type gossip of like, now that even if a bar made a mistake, even if that happened, like you literally are just refusing to let it go and you're just gonna say, now I'm gonna demonize you forever, and all the people who go there, like, it's just so crazy. Like, why? Just calm down, chill out, give people a break. Like, I get annoyed when people bring it up too much and like try to ask me about it, like, because people at the door too sometimes they're like, I've heard some stuff about this bar. Like, is it okay? I'm like, yes, it's fine. Like, what? You literally will go in and you'll be fine. It'll be fine. Just
the security guard was like, you should not go in.
No, seriously, like it's just, and that's why you can tell it's mostly people getting really heavily involved in internet drama and like talking to people who have very specific biases, and then that's all that they pay attention to instead of just coming into the bar and hanging out like a person and then seeing it from an actual realistic real life perspective and not just what you hear on the internet. Yeah, I don't know.
I totally get what you're saying about like the queer community being susceptible to this kind of drama and stuff. What have you seen anything like specifically in the Portland community that sort of mirrors that?
I think it really does just come down to everything has to be super inclusive. Everything has to be politically correct. Nothing can offend anybody. Everything has to be like specifically that way, or you are like immediately vilified and demonized. There's a lot of everything has to be very specifically tailored towards everyone. And so there's just lots of arguments about how to do something the right way within the queer community. They argue with each other and vilify one another for not doing something the right way or offending one aspect of the group, and then now you're a bad person forever. It is very volatile, and but it's also like it can be great. It's not always like that. It's just that's what I see sometimes with like, but that's what it feels like to me, is that it's mostly about like an understanding from a human perspective, like and taking certain things too seriously, too personally, overreacting for the sake of just causing drama and like making things more exciting. It's like, you know, it's just weird. I don't particularly get it. It's very exhausting. And it's mostly with the younger queer community. It's like you see a lot of the older lesbians, they're like, meh.
Do you feel like the Portland queer community skews very young?
Yes, definitely. I think that the older queer people tend to like go to like underground places where we don't hear about them, and like we don't know where. I think the Escape Bar and Grill is actually pretty known for being like an older lesbian place, which is interesting because it has the same name as the Escape. So the Escape Bar and Grill has been around for a long time, and I hear a lot of the older lesbian crowd talking about going there on a regular basis. And I'm pretty sure that it's owned by a lesbian couple, if I remember correctly. I've only been there once. They tend to go in their own circles, and they're not as loud. The younger generation in the queer community in Portland is very loud. Like they're in control for sure.
Cruising is independently reported and produced by a small but mighty team of 3. Story producer and social media manager Rachel Karp, line producer and resident road trip driver Jen McGinnity, and story producer and audio engineer me, Sarah Gabrielli. Our theme song is by Joey Freeman. This episode was sponsored by Olivia Travel. You can find us at our website, cruisingpod.com, on social media at cruisingpod, or support us at buymeacoffee.com/cruisingpod. Listen to Cruising wherever you get your podcasts.